Hello, everyone. We're back with Annie Williams. We had a couple things done before, a couple videos done before, but we're ready to talk about Venus retrograde. But also, we're not just going to talk about Venus retrograde because of the astrology, but we're going to talk about the goddess. And today's Friday, of course, and it's her day. So I really want Annie to talk about what she's been doing here in Sedona. We haven't talked, I think, a month or so, or a month and a half.
Yeah.
And Sedona is the goddess, and she tells us what to do in different ways, and she wakes us up. So Annie, it's up to you. You can start.
Well, thank you for inviting me again, Seffi. It's always a pleasure to share with you and your people. And when you said let's talk about Venus, wow, it just kicked off a lot because right now I'm recording new chants that have been percolating, waiting to come out. One is to Artemis, the great mother Artemis, and the other one is Hygeia, which in your language, Yia.
Yeah, yes. The
And so this whole connection with the great mother is just something that we have both been dedicated to for a long time. And on Venus's day, I was thinking about how the Mediterranean, the southern flavors of the Near East, and even well, of course, the Greek, all the Mediterranean cultures revered the goddess. And it's only been a short period of relatively that people have had this patriarchal domination in their psyches, but it was always the great mother providing the food, the nurturing, giving birth to everything, giving birth to beauty. And that is the function of Venus Aphrodite. I think you say her Aphrodite?
Aphrodite, yes.
Aphrodite. And, in the modern times, people have gotten this sort of limited idea of Venus Aphrodite, that she's just this sex goddess. And yet she's the great mother that is so ancient. I mean, anyone that is birthed out of the foam of the sea, this idea of the primordial sea has that ancient connection. So today, in different languages, we have it in Spanish, viernes, like Venus, or vendredi for Venus in French. So they've named this day for her. And I definitely want to have this more of a conversation than me just going blah, 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 but just briefly, Venus in its orbit in the heavens. And, as you mentioned, going into the underworld and retrograde. She goes into the underworld on the 28th of May. So she's invisible until the 11th or so of June. And then she becomes the morning star. So she's reborn. So she's going into the underworld, which is very deep. Again, that primordial energy, the dream time, good time to create, go into meditation and that depth. And Venus is the only planet that makes a perfect geometric shape in the heavens, which is the pentagram. Exactly. Every 8 years, from the Earth, it looks like a perfect pentagram. It's the only one that is perfect. That's the golden mean ratio, which is perfect harmony, beauty, all the principles. There's a reason why we relate Venus Aphrodite to the principles of love, beauty, music, harmony. So, that resonance is an ancient archetypal. It has a root in reality.
Absolutely, it does. And, every time I think of her going retrograde, I think about those pretty much 40 days of her going deep within herself and reborn again, and a lot of the story of Inanna, for me, it's that Venus that she goes in the underworld and takes her, her jewelry. She's not the queen anymore. She's not the goddess. She's just totally naked and vulnerable and beautiful in that purity of her. And then she just comes out and becomes the morning sun. So it really connects to the women that we go through that a lot. You know, we go through this process many times of our lives. And I think men go also, but I think a woman's body, energy, her field is more of that process of going through that, you know, birth, rebirth, and then just shine again. And of course, going into meditation and going, because I think Inanna is probably the only goddess that I know that and I might be wrong, that talk about her going into the underworld as much.
Right.
I mean, we got,
Yeah.
you know, in the Greek tradition, we got Persephone, but it's a little bit of a different story with Persephone, I think. But I think that's, anyway, I don't know. Do you know of any other goddess except Inanna?
I think Inanna is a good choice because she is so ancient and complete in her beingness.
Yes.
Persephone as the daughter is one aspect, but I think Inanna is the fullness and wholeness of that feminine embodiment.
And she just really, you know, goes through her grief, goes through her cleansing, goes through her emotional process, and then she gets born again. And again, is being the sister, but she is the queen, and she's not the queen anymore in the underworld, you know. And to me, but she doesn't keep the queen of how she looks, but the queen is inside of her, you know. It's in her being, it's in her soul, and she's the goddess, and she's not in fear of what she's gonna see. And then that surrender, I just love that surrender and the vulnerability at that time.
Well, and that speaks to our time now. We are all vulnerable. We are having to peel off all the layers of how we look, how we appear in the world. We're having to undo patterns, paradigms of habitual behavior as a humanity, as a whole.
Yeah.
And we're together. And when you mentioned the lamenting of the great mother, this happened throughout time with every archetype or every manifestation of the great mother principle, this vulnerability and the ability to weep and the ability to feel. And of course, men do that, and sometimes even more.
Even more.
When women put on their walls and layers of protection, but we are all in this together, and there is a great lamenting going on, and a great celebration at the same time. We're going to be celebrating being reborn with Venus, and hopefully, as people carefully venture out into the world around the same time, you know, a lot of restrictions are being lifted in this period. Hopefully, people do that sensitively, and especially around mid-June for European countries starting to travel and move about more and to come out more. So at the same time that Venus is reborn as the morning star is really quite nice.
Yeah, and it's interesting for me that, you know, there's not just Venus is retrograding, there's other planets in astrology, but it's funny that we need to go back like that again. It's, you know, instead of going forward, it may be something we missed, something that we really need to re-look at things, you know, and see what really serves us to go forward. I think this is the time, this time for me, you know. I'm very careful how I go out. I still don't really just go, oh, I'm going to go and hang out with 30 people, or even, you know, or go to the store every day, or go to restaurants. And I think instead of us really looking at this time of like, oh my God, we've been stuck in the house and we can't get out, just look at it more sensible, because we've been looking for this change, you know. The world, and somehow we've been looking not to have this crazy life that we had, but to have a more sensible, more maybe vulnerable in a way, I want to call it, maybe more open to our feelings, maybe more really share with others more the truth that we are, not to blame others for what, if we did a mistake or an experience, as I talked about it for the last week, but maybe to look at why we did that and why this happened in our lives, you know. So we're revisiting a lot of things right now, I think.
Yeah, and I really hear what you're saying, and it feels like we're becoming more authentic.
Yes.
More sustainable. I mean, in our choices and what we do and how we are. And And I'm finding this time of a lot of planets retrograding, a very deep time, like you say, time for review. I'm finding it very creative.
I agree.
A time to stop moving out and a time to gestate and perhaps start manifesting some of those things that have been gestating. I know it's not a time to really move out quickly, but I'm finding the creative process is moving really fast right now. I went in 2 short sessions in music studio, and it was so fast. In 2 hours or 3 hours, I laid down all the harp tracks. I went back another day and laid all the vocal tracks, at
Wow.
least first run. I thought, how could that be? You know, but it just is true.
Yeah, and I think this is what it is. If we go in, we become more creative instead of running out there all the time. I think the creation needs to happen just like a gestation inside of us. And I think that's very, very important to do it. And I find that for myself. Like I talked about the other day about magical things happening because I had things on my board, on my vision board that I wanted to do for a long time, and now are happening. I'm like, whoa, you know, they've been there for like maybe 10 years, you know, and like I keep wanting to do this. And now it's just opened up because
Yeah.
I'm more settled, I'm more calm, I'm more ready for this new birth. And it's time, you know, and it's time. I get people calls from, you know, I don't know, 10 years ago that I did a lecture or a talk and whatever. And they said, you know, you gave us a seat back then, and it took us that long to actually call you, but now we're calling you. We want help. Can you guide us? So I think that's really beautiful also that, you know, we've done so much work, and now people are really, really appreciating that seed that we gave them, you know, a long time ago, and now they're ready to birth it. And I think that's the great mother. That is the great mother, you know?
Yeah, and it's happening a lot. It's accelerating. At the same time that we're resting, everything is accelerating, like you say, and what has been laid down as a foundation for so many decades. And I'm involved in, well, we were talking about Venus, and I'd like to mention again its connection with music. And there's an article on my website that when you said Venus, I went and I reread it and I thought, oh, right. I want to share that with people because it's free. They can read it in their own time. And it's called Music, Geometry, and Healing.
Send me the link. Send me the link, and I'll put it onto the video so people can actually go to it.
Perfect. That's the easiest thing. There were 2 articles on the connection between music and Venus that I wrote years ago, and I thought, oh, they're still timely. You know, and even on one morning when Venus was the morning star, this was years ago, I heard music singing in my bedroom, and I got up, I looked around, I couldn't see anybody putting music on, and I looked outside, and there was Venus shining as the morning star, bright as anything, and I heard music coming from her. So this is something that you can find in ancient cultural traditions, that they built their temples to let in the light of Venus in the early morning, especially when she's a morning star.
Yes.
And it rises just before the sun. And temples such as Newgrange in Ireland and some of the temples in Scotland and others around the world, they let in the morning light of Venus as like an impregnation of beauty into the earth, you know, into these long chambers that are like a womb.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and the music and the light of Venus would enter in.
So, you know, so she can go back in the night, but then she already created in the morning, which is so beautiful. I just love all this stuff. I'm so excited that we're doing this. Because
Me too.
people really need to know that the ancient traditions, and I think they're coming up so strongly now for us to really take whatever is not whatever they had told us, but whatever is really true, you know, and then really get to the next level, because there's reason that the ancient times are working up again for me, you know. And I heard something really beautiful the other day. Someone said, it's not golden era, it's golden life. It's because back then in the golden times we were golden, you know, we were that because of the goddess, or we were of the god, because we walked on this earth like that. And to me, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing to know that, you know, we can go again into that level of finding the goddess and finding the god within us, and really connecting to all those beautiful ancient in a different way, because now we can do ceremonies a little bit more modified, you know, but we still can do them and honor the goddess. And
Yeah, and the golden cells within each one of us, the
yeah.
golden heart, the I'm just seeing someone outside of my window picking something. Okay. Anyway, sorry.
We're live, guys, so we do, you know, we're
He was trimming the tree.
like,
Anyway, one of the songs that I'm recording now called Dragon and Pearl, and it's based on the archetype, or not the archetype, the Gnostic text of the Hymn of the Pearl. And
oh,
it's an allegorical journey of the quest for the treasure. And the treasure is a pearl within this cave, and it's guarded by a dragon. And when I'm singing it, I'm singing about the analogy of the pearl within our mind and hearts of each one of us, and that it's guarded by the dragon, which is the Kundalini. And with activating the breath and visualizing inside of us that circuit of the golden light, we light ourselves from within, and that's where we become golden. And it's not even starting outside, it's starting inside.
exactly.
So what time, since we're, you know, quarantining and having to be more quiet and alone, to work on those sorts of things, to bring that light brighter from within us. And then we are more available for the magic of the heavens and the earth and all the beauty around us.
I agree. I just want to let you guys, we're a little bit out of time, but we're going to come with a second version, not version, but the second, whatever that is called.
Too.
Not my words after this, but thank you for watching. Please subscribe and sign up in my site, and I will actually put Annie's link to that Avena, so you guys can read a little bit more about it. Thank you so much. Thank you, Annie. I really appreciate it. Namaste.